Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar. I'm Francis Seeley from Global Net 21 and a local organisation called Enfield Climate Action Forum. And obviously, we're concerned with climate change. And how do you address climate change? How do you look at the actions that are necessary in order to decarbonise, to reduce emissions? Now, one of the ways you can do that is through mapping and models. And a lot of people have talked about that. I know that someone called Glenn Weinrap in his book, A Plan to Save the Planet, has talked about we need more and more web-based simulations and tools to tackle this for communities and for organizations. And I know Mark Jacobson in his book, No Miracles Needed, and he's from Stanford University, has developed a simulation that's been used for developing climate plans for New York State and many other places. Now, there is another model, which is interesting, called En-ROADS, and that's being widely used globally. And we're lucky today because we've got Dr. Petra Molthan-Hil with us, and she leads the Green Academy in Nottingham Trent University. And she's going to talk to us about that today. So welcome, Petra. Maybe we could start by you just telling us a little bit briefly about yourself.
Yeah, as you already mentioned, I have led the Green Academy at Nottingham Trent University for 8 years, and now I have handed this a bit over to my successor, but I'm now focusing on training, like what I did here at the university, to do it worldwide. So I'm training academics mainly from universities and business schools worldwide on how to integrate, especially climate literacy, into all their teaching, into all the different disciplines.
And is that why models are good and important to do that?
Yeah, once I came across En-ROADS, which was in 2020, I really thought this is a brilliant model, and I used it nearly in everything. So I have mentioned it in the books I have written. I have used it in the trainings with our students, in the trainings with the academics worldwide. As whenever I do something, I always have the feeling En-ROADS is a perfect thing to put into it and to really get the message across.
And in fact, you're an ambassador for En-ROADS, aren't you? And there's about 700 of those throughout the world.
Yeah, no, I think this is really nice. So I think it was for me very important because I'm so convinced that it's a good tool, and I'm using it on conferences as well and so on. So I was very happy to be included in the ambassador program there.
Okay, so we're talking about En-ROADS, and people will be saying, well, what are they talking about? What is En-ROADS? It's a nice name, but maybe you could tell us a bit about it. And if you want to share your screen, please do.
Yeah, I think it's always easier to show people what En-ROADS is about. So I think I will kind of go to it now. Let's have a. So I think what is really important when you look at En-ROADS, so first, what I really like about it is that it is making it accessible to everybody. So I think when I can explain to you in a moment, you will realize you don't need to have a mathematical background like with other simulations or something. It's something very easy. Everyone can play with it. And quite often, actually, when I do it with my students, they spend the whole weekend and said, oh, I spent hours on it. I tried this solution, and they really get carried away. But this is a nice thing that everyone can do something with it. But when you look at this now, what you see that here at the moment is that we are going towards 3.6 degrees. And I think you know that we have to hopefully not cross 1.5 degrees. So this is based on real data in the background. So even if you don't see it here, it's always calculated on data from all over the world and put together in this model. And then you can decide, okay, now let's change something. For example, something really good in the UK and many other countries is if you would increase energy efficiency of buildings and industries, you can see how the model reacts. So it's going down. I will replay this for you. Look, it has gone down from 3.6 to 3.2 degrees. And this is only implementing one solution, as insulating homes, for example, as one of the big things we could do in every country. And then you can look at all the other solutions here. Obviously, here at this side, we have the energy supply, and I will only choose one of them. You might have heard about carbon price. If I do this very strong, you get quite a difference in the energy mix. And do watch it again. Look at these different colors here when I pre-play it for you. And you can see how suddenly, by putting a high carbon price, the renewables get much stronger. You can see that the share of them has increased a lot. And obviously, overall, it has already reduced a lot how much energy we are using overall just by doing these two solutions. But there are other solutions. In the middle, you can see transport and building and industry. And then on the right-hand side, you can see things like deforestation, which you will have heard about, afforestation, planting trees everywhere in the world, and other plans where we can do this, what they have calculated here in the background. And then we have things here like methane, which is, for example, reducing your food waste. So if you all don't throw so much food away worldwide, what is going to happen then? And can we get to 1.5 degrees? And I think I can't do the whole training with you, but if I can just set you a challenge now at the end, now I have shared it with you, try to test it out for yourself. Just put the link in, and we might share this link with you as well. And then try to get it down to 1.5 degrees and put all these things together. Yeah, and I think this is maybe enough for the moment. Or do you have a question actually which you want to ask me while I'm sharing my screen?
Okay, well, I'll ask you a question because it's only me here. One of the interesting things about that model when I looked at it is it tells you two things: how you can reduce your carbon emissions, and also, secondly, equally important, how fast you can do it. And some of the changes will reduce, but it takes time. And some, like the carbon pricing one, does it very quickly. And that's quite important, is it? Because, you know, all the time we're increasing carbon in the air. So the quicker you can reduce, the more effective it's going to be and the less catastrophic our future will be.
Yeah, I think this is quite, as what you said is really important. Like when you do this one, at the moment I can show you this, it's actually set to start in 2023. And obviously you might think, yeah, this is quite soon, pretty much today. So I think it's really important that, as you said, this is based on what I have just done with the carbon price, and to get this nice reduction is based that we start today with this one. But you can decide, okay, if you only manage to do it next year, then it changes the whole overview, and you could try it out for yourself what happens then.
All right. So, I mean, just to let people know, I mean, this is something that some amateurs created, is it? It's come out of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Is that right?
Yeah, it is kind of by them and Climate Interactive. So Climate Interactive was the leading, but it was supported and in collaboration with MIT.
And they have a whole series of academics and other universities who peer review it and update it as well, don't they?
Yeah, and as I have actually, as when you want to look into detail, there's a 600 pages guide to gives you all the background, and it's actually all because on the simulation you need to have mathematicians. So you have first all the people who have the understanding of the solution and of the science and so on, but then it's put into mathematical formula, and they are all in the background. So it is very, very sophisticated, but I think it's so nice to use at the same time.
I mean, it's great. I mean, if you like gaming, it's fantastic because you can play with it and you can create a perfect world in your mind. Problem is, how do you turn that perfect world? How do you turn what you do into climate solutions? That's a big step, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and when I do the workshop, I always use it as a starting point just to get the big picture. But then I think you can always focus in on one of the solutions. For example, I just showed to you that I was increasing energy efficiency in buildings. And obviously then in the training, if someone is from has anything to do with buildings, it could be a local authority, it could be a builder or someone, I will talk about what are the solutions, what do we have for retrofitting, what do we need to focus on when we actually change anything that regards to buildings and houses in the countries.
So you come up with, you know, a sort of action plan as a result of that. Let's talk about that in a minute. But you were talking about what you do. What you do is you develop training courses, don't you? And you've actually written a book, and you've got a number of courses, and you work with businesses. Do you want to tell us a bit about what you do? So if people want to join in with that, they could.
Yeah, I think I have lots of training. So there's training specifically for academics and anyone working in universities, which we are distributing worldwide. And I do this with QS World Merit and UN Prime. Then we have courses, for example, for business. So we have a specific one for Nottingham Bid, which is something in the UK. So if you're not from the UK, it is useful for any, as it's the Nottingham Bid for example, it has big and small companies in it, and the training is made for everyone, for smaller and bigger companies. So it's a kind of generic training. But then what I have focused in on recently is to do more online trainings as well. So we have a climate literacy and action for all, which is really for everyone. So it's a free online course which you can do with Future Learn, which uses En-ROADS at the beginning, and then we go in lots of solutions. And we also have an online course which is starting soon, which is for, on master level. So you can also get 10 credits with it, but it's also for everybody. So anyone who just wants to do it for the knowledge could do this course as well. It's again with Future Learn as well. Yeah, and I think these are only some of the things I'm doing. I'm doing so many.
Only some of the things, well. But I mean, you can send that to me, can't you? And we can send that out to people with all the links. So if they're interested in taking part, they can. I mean, when you sort of started playing with En-ROADS yourself and you looked at its possibilities and its applications, did you consider it was primarily an educational tool or a policy creating tool?
No, also it's both for me. So as I say, I'm using it for students as much as I would use. For example, I didn't mention I had a workshop with MPs actually in the British Parliament. So, and obviously when I work with MPs, I would more focus on the policy side of things. So I think it depends on the audience how you use it. Because as I say, when we had this on a local level, for example, there's a really nice slide, maybe I can share with you as well, which show how you can when you do a kind of, it's called a walking bus with children to go to school, and you don't bring them all individually with your car to school. Obviously, bringing them all individually with a car to school causes a lot of emissions, and you can make a walking bus, and then they all walk together, and you have a few adults who support them. And this is, for example, linked to En-ROADS as well. There's a really nice slide where En-ROADS themselves have actually linked the walking bus to the model, and I could share this with you if you're interested.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to say you work with MPs. It'd be interesting to see how you got on with them, because I can remember decades ago, I'm that old, talking to Richard Marsh, who was the chairman of British Rail, and he said he talked to MPs about an econometric model he had, and they said, "Oh, could you bring it over and show it to us?" Like they thought it was a solid thing. Do you have that problem with MPs, or do they understand that modelling in the way that En-ROADS is one of the ways of the future?
Yeah, no, I think they really found it very. I mean, I had only 1 hour with them because obviously they are all very, very busy. But it was really, I was amazed how they engaged with this, because I always do it as a game. So I asked them which one they think is the best solution, and we kind of then changed the lever which was associated with their ideas. And I think this was really, I mean, they kind of said that they took a lot out of them, and that they found it easy. As I think it's En-ROADS is too easy for everyone to understand. I think it's if whoever is doing it, even if you have only 1 hour with people and you want to still come to the policies, because I didn't want to just do En-ROADS. So En-ROADS was only 15 minutes with them, and then we came to the policies. So
I mean, you do it with MPs. Can you do it with, say, primary school children as well? Could they use it?
as I would say, primary school might be still a bit challenging. As I always say, everything I do is from 14 onwards. So I have tested it with my own daughter who is 14 and she can do it. So I assume everyone from this age group can do it and also find it interesting.
Yeah, the trouble is when you try it with your children, you find they could do it better than you. And that's always a problem. You also work with businesses, don't you? And it becomes a tool that businesses can use as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely a tool which businesses can use, and I think it's everyone. I have worked in the past with all sizes, so starting with SMEs, but all the way to the NHS. For example, I have worked with the NHS on integrating the Sustainable Development Goals into the Sustainable Development Assessment tool, and I think for any group it is a fantastic starting point. As I can only repeat myself here, but I think it is great. So whoever you have there, but I think what is important, you take it as a starting point, and then you need to focus in on the people. So obviously, when you work with the NHS, they have totally different problems than if you work with a local authority or with someone working in secondary school. I've worked, by the way, a lot with secondary schools already as well.
Do many secondary schools in the UK use En-ROADS or know about En-ROADS?
We are trying to promote it as with Educate Global. I don't know if you're aware of Educate Global, but it's who's working with secondary schools, and we had specific trainings. For example, we had a training for teachers from the UK and teachers from Dubai, which was an interesting, also international experience, I think. And I think it can be used again. It is a fantastic tool, and you can not only, when you think of secondary schools, it's not only in geography where normally climate change is placed. People have used it in all the other topics as a subjects as well. So I think you can use it in all of them.
Yeah, I did a webinar with a lady in Educate Global, so I know that they do a great deal of work, which is great. I mean, and what about local authorities? I mean, local authorities have many of them, lots of them have declared a climate emergency, and then they thought, oh my gosh, what do we do now?
Yeah.
And some of them didn't do anything. Some of them did quite sophisticated things, and some of them just got consultants in who came up with a template they take around from authority to authority.
Oh.
Can En-ROADS help local authorities develop a climate strategy?
Yeah, I think it's again the starting point. For me, it's to get the big picture and then to talk about, so what do you think are actually problems in your area? What would you call, also when you look at the different En-ROADS area, what are things you could influence? For example, there might not every local authority might have afforestation, also might have lots of space to plant trees or something. They might have other things they can do, like for example, what is the building stock? As I think a lot of people, especially in the UK, but also in other European countries, there's a real problem that a lot of the houses and so do need refurbishment. And I think you can then work on plans around this, for example, how can you incentivize this? How can you focus on the transport in every city? I think you can really have a lot of, I mean, what we have done here actually with Nottingham, our council, is that we have worked with them. And then we had a whole day with our students where they kind of gave us the 5 biggest challenges they saw for themselves. And our students were trying to develop solutions for it, which was really nice. And I would really recommend it to other local authorities to maybe work with a local university and get the students to then develop solutions further for them.
Yeah, I mean, when local authorities produce plans, very often they're not very verifiable. They haven't sort of done that. They've just set them up and they haven't tested them afterwards. En-ROADS gives them a chance to look at how you can look at the variables and then how you might be able to discuss how you verify it afterwards, which is pretty important, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I think it is really, and it's like, because you can always, I think important is when you work with En-ROADS to say we can't do everything. So you might not be able to set a carbon price if you're not a country or something, but you might be able to do one of the other solutions. And when you try it out, you will realize that, for example, also for me, it's really building, improving the improving also, obviously, council, for example, has also its own buildings. And we have worked here with our local council on actually greenhouse gas management for all the big buildings here. And we had, I don't know if you're not from the UK, you might not know it, but Newstead Abbey is one of the things our council here owns, kind of, and has to look after. Newstead Abbey is from one of the poets in the UK, Lord Byron, is a home, and it's a very, very old, drafty. No, I mean, it's a very pretty building, but it is very problematic when it comes to greenhouse gas management. And so these things you can then work on and improve and really kind of come up how you can actually improve really these ancient buildings as well.
Yeah. Okay. So the model itself is pretty useful in terms of actually playing with it and finding out how when you change one variable, then it has an impact on emissions at a certain date. But obviously, turning it into action becomes difficult. And where can you get the help to turn what you find out in En-ROADS into action? Who can help with that? I mean, if you just use it and then it's a vacuum afterwards, it's no good. You need to have people, don't you, afterwards, who will sort of create action plans about what you found.
Yeah, and I think this is what we have done with our carbon literacy training, climate literacy training. There's a carbon literacy training in Manchester, a carbon literacy project, which offers a lot of trainers and for different industries and so on. And also they have actually a special guide for local authorities as well. So you might get in contact with the carbon literacy project in Manchester. But what we have done also with our training, with climate literacy training, is that we use En-ROADS as a starting point, but then we have also loads of different tools, loads of different other insights to actually come to the solutions, and we always end with a climate action plan. So I think for us, as for me, it was very important to not have En-ROADS on its own, but to connect it to all the other things. And this is what we offer really with all our trainings.
I mean, so how could we get that information fairly easily and accessibly? Because I think if we were to do something on En-ROADS, then I think it would be good to know how you could have those key people to help you do that. Where could you find that?
Yeah, I mean, I say it's a climate literacy and action for all would be a good training. It's a free online training with Future Learn where you already get some ideas, but it's also good if you take part in an interactive training, because what I really strongly believe in is on upscaling. So it's kind of good to take part in one workshop, and then you actually get upscaled. So once you have done it once, you can yourself, also anyone who watching here, kind of could, for example, decide, okay, now I become a climate literacy trainer and I do it for my own area, and I do En-ROADS at the beginning, and then I connect it to the right solutions for my area. And I think this is really possible. And if you want to look out how this can be done, for example, I don't know if you're aware of the BAFTA program, as a carbon literacy training in BAFTA.
Yeah.
Also that which is actually for the television sector, and they are really advanced in this. So they have done the carbon literacy training for each of the areas in the television sector, which are important. So there's one specifically for the production teams, there's one specifically for the editorials, as people who are writing the stories for the soaps and so on. So you could, so it's a very good training developed for the industry. So I think it wouldn't be useful for anyone who is not working in television. So it's really, if you're working in television, to go for this. But I think this is the model which I would like to see in every industry, in every area. Start with a few people, and then they go out and they train more, and they go out and train more, and suddenly we have thousands of people training.
I mean that sort of ripple effect, multiplier effect, is really quite interesting. What about community groups? We had a forum last night, and we had someone talking about an Islamic view to climate change, because we wanted to look at how faiths approach climate change. And someone that was on that call, who was a sustainability officer, I think, in Harringay, and he contacted me afterwards and said, do you think it would be good if we could get some carbon literacy training for faith groups and other groups? So, I mean, if you use En-ROADS for community groups, how valuable would that be? And how would you get the carbon literacy trainers for community groups?
Yeah, I mean, this is again, I think it is the same approach. And for example, I have already a colleague who has focused on faith groups. So she has adapted the training and decide, okay, she will do it for faith groups. So, for example, we could put you in contact with her. It's Professor Sigrun Wagner. So I think there are people already for the different areas. So for community groups, I think it is always too important to. Yeah, actually, we have in our free training, which we run worldwide, we have always community groups involved as well. We have people from a lot of African community groups, which are, it's really fascinating what they do with the training, actually, because they have suddenly these really big community events as their climate action plan. And I find this really fascinating how fast they put something, after they've done the training, put something into place in their own community.
I mean, we had this idea, we only had a sort of notion to begin with, that maybe we could link up a school with a Caribbean or an African school and use En-ROADS. And then we can link that into the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, is that something that would be worth trying?
I think this would be a really good idea. Yeah, I think this would be, and I think you can also actually with the Sustainable Development Goals in our training, we always make the connection between En-ROADS, and then we use a framework. I don't know if you have heard it, Flowers, which was also created by Climate Interactive, which is looking making the move from climate solutions to all the other benefits. So in this model, you have already some of the SDGs integrated. So it's a nice way of coming from En-ROADS over Flowers to the SDGs. So I think this is something I would recommend to do. And I would be very happy to support anyone who wants to set this up kind of and brainstorm a little bit and give a bit of my expertise to it as well.
Okay, I will take you up on that. You may regret it.
No, I think it would be brilliant.
No, if we could do something like that, it would be great. But yeah, I mean, just to plug it, you've done a book as well, haven't you, on carbon management, a step-by-step guide to climate solutions. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, this is also, we have actually again used En-ROADS in the first chapter when we are setting the scene and that to give people the overview. But then I think what this book is really about, I think it's for everyone. It's not only, as it says, for every manager, but it's because we had to shorten the title. If I could have chosen it to be longer, then I would have said every manager, every employee, everyone in a community group, every local authority, everyone pretty much, because I think the book is for everyone, really. All the solutions are for everyone in there. And what we have done in all the different areas is always give an overview about the topic. And then we have organized 5 of the best high impact solutions for you. So you can actually look up what is the best. For example, if you take buildings, is one chapter is about buildings and refurbishments and designing new buildings and so on. And we have given you in each of these sections then 5 high impact solutions and lots of further material where you can get more information. And we have organized it so that it applies to loads of people. Like we have a whole chapter on food, for example, which you do on a private level, and you have catering and you have restaurants and you have companies having their own cafeterias and they're doing catering and so on. So it's for everyone, really, this book.
Okay, well, we come close to the end. Well, we've probably gone over the 30 minutes and we could go on for a long time. But, you know, we're in a fairly critical situation now where if we don't take the actions that are necessary, we're going to go well over 1.5 degrees by the end of the century. We'll probably reach that in about 10 years. I mean, do you think tools like En-ROADS are a really important contribution in getting people to focus their minds on what they need to do and what actions they need to take? Do we need these sort of tools to become even more sophisticated as we go along? And do you think they will help achieve what we want to do by the end of the century?
Yeah, I don't think they need to become more sophisticated. I think it's really important that Climate Interactive and MIT, for example, always integrates the newest insights, and I know they do it. Also, for example, if there are new high impact solutions coming out, they integrate it in the model, but it doesn't really change the model much from how it looks like, because I think En-ROADS on its own does, for me, not fully get to solving the problem. There needs to be, as I say, there needs to be a workshop where you then talk about policies, if you're, for example, talking with politicians also, or there needs to be something specifically for builders. If you work with builders on the topic, there needs to be something specific for local council. So I think it is a nice, for me, engagement tool to get people started. But then I think the sophistication and where we need the detail and lots of work very fast is how to then get the right solutions to the right people.
Okay, so I mean, we've sort of come to the end. So if people wanted to find out more about it and what you do, where would they go?
If they, yeah, I mean, I think it is, we hopefully give you a list of the different offers we have already, and I think it would be nice to do this. I think it is, I mean, maybe I'm setting myself up for lots of work, but it's okay to send me an email and I will send you then to the right person, because there are so many different people out there. Obviously, if you're in the US and you're watching this, I would contact Climate Interactive directly, because they have all the En-ROADS ambassador, and maybe you also want to share the other En-ROADS ambassadors. So because obviously there are worldwide loads of people, so you might want to look it up. I think they have a map and you can choose the one from your area. So you might want to ask another En-ROADS ambassador then to help you with this. So don't come all to me. I don't know how many are these watching, because I might be too much. There are loads of other people who can help as well.
Yeah. Now, don't worry, we won't come to you all the time. But I mean, thank you. I mean, thank you, because I mean, you've given a really, really, brief description of NCAS, which is totally understandable. And I think that's important, and it's going to help us in trying to develop this and see how we can use it. And I think there are lots of ways we can use it. And I think I will contact global education as well and see if we can work on the school level as well, because I think that's really important. So thank you for doing it, because it's a great introduction for us, and that's what we wanted to do, and we're going to take it further. But we just wanted to get a basic idea and insight into the model, and I think you've given it to us, and how you need to link that in with carbon literacy training, and that is also equally important. So thank you very much for doing this. It's been really great, and we'll end this webinar.
Thanks very much for having me. Thanks, and good luck for your plans.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll need it. Anyhow, thank you, and we'll end this webinar now.